College life, it's about growing up and preparing to advance in the workplace.
As we drive into Charleston, a proudly preserved beauty and traditions of its earlier days.
A second College of Charleston fraternity shuts down.
A favorite example for visitors is this gaily painted block called Rainbow Row.
If you ask students at the College of Charleston, it's also about freedom and having a social life that includes drinking and late-night parties.
On a balmy spring evening in 2016, a sharp crack of gunfire shattered the quiet of Charleston's historic district.
Right now, police are still on the scene of Smith Street after a man was shot there this afternoon. Charleston police responded to a call around 4 o'clock, and officials say one man was shot and taken to MUSC.
In a stately house on Smith Street, just a block from the College of Charleston library, 23-year-old Patrick Moffly lay bleeding on the hardwood floor, a single bullet wound in his chest. Hundreds of little blue Xanax bars were scattered around him, where ambition and greed had finally collided. As Patrick struggled for breath, gasping for help didn't come, at least not right away. Instead, survival instincts kicked in the ugliest way possible. One roommate grabbed 2 fat baggies of pills and ran them out back, burying them under beer cans in a trash bin. Another leaned down, not to save Patrick, but to swallow a loose Xanax off the floor before hiding his own stash. Eyes darting, heart racing. Only after the drugs were secured did reality creep back in. Someone pressed a crumpled napkin against Patrick's chest. Another finally called 911. But the moment had already passed. By the time the ambulance arrived, the son of a powerful real estate family was already slipping away, pronounced dead shortly after reaching the hospital. What looked at first like a senseless tragedy turned out to be the flashpoint that unraveled a sprawling criminal enterprise. Patrick Moffly's murder blew open the secrets of a multi-million-dollar drug ring run by fraternity brothers. A hidden web of drugs, money, and privilege operating in plain sight. This wasn't some random crime. Investigators quickly confirmed the killing was drug-related, and the pills littering the scene were a clue to something much bigger. In June 2016, Charleston's police chief announced the arrest of a network of college-age dealers responsible for one of the largest drug busts in the city's history. This wasn't the cartel, but fraternity brothers from the College of Charleston who had used their Greek life connections to push cocaine, weed, LSD, hash oil, ecstasy, and tens of thousands of Xanax pills. For years, they operated with impunity on campus as they funneled drugs to thousands of college kids across the Southeast. It was a racket born in beer-soaked fraternity houses and upscale student apartments, where youth and privilege provided the perfect cover for illicit dealings. At the center of it all were 2 friends turned partners in crime, Michael Mikey Schmidt and Robert Rob Liljeberg. Mikey arrived at College of Charleston as a freshman in 2013, as a brash kid from Atlanta with a mischievous streak and a hustler's confidence. Mikey also had a nose for profit. Before even unpacking his dorm, he was making cash hand over fist selling fake IDs. During orientation, Mikey wandered past the fraternity recruiting tables under the moss-draped oak trees of College of Charleston's Cistern Yard, sizing up the Greek scene. He wasn't drawn to the buttoned-up elitist fraternities like SAE or Pike that recruited heirs from New England prep schools. Instead, he found himself at the booth of the Kappa Alpha Frat, a southern fraternity known more for keg parties and hunting trips than high society. There, he met Rob Liljeberg, a blonde sophomore in khakis who sat lazily eating a Subway footlong, clearly high as a kite. "Y'all smoke?" Mikey asked. Rob grinned through half-closed eyes. "Yeah, we burn," he replied, extending an invitation to come hit his bong across the street. That impromptu smoke session sealed a friendship and a future alliance. Mikey and Rob became kindred spirits in the Kappa Alpha house, bonding over a shared love of weed and Super Smash Bros. Video games. Neither was a stellar student. They devoted more energy to partying and hustling than to any classwork. Early on, they realized they could make far more money supplying their fraternity brothers' vices than by working any regular job. Mikey was already a campus plug for fake IDs and pot, and Rob had a small clientele for his own weed dealing. So they joined forces. Seeing an opening, they teamed up to sell harder drugs to other students in Charleston and began recruiting other members of Kappa Alpha to deal for them. In this crowd of hard-partying frat boys, There was ample demand and virtually no supervision. The young dealers grew bolder by the day, testing the limits of what they could get away with. During Kappa Alpha's Hell Week, Mikey and his pledge class staged a reckless hazing stunt known as Kidnap Night, duct taping the pledge master's son and locking him in the trunk of his own car as a prank. Police stopped the vehicle after hearing screams, but Mikey laughed it off, telling officers it was just a joke. Despite the real risk of felony charges, the incident was dismissed as harmless hazing, and Mikey faced no real consequences, emerging emboldened by yet another escape from accountability. By the time sophomore year rolled around, Mikey Schmidt felt untouchable. In truth, college couldn't contain him. He partied so hard and focused so little on academics that he dropped out after freshman year, returning home to Atlanta. But he never dropped his ambitions to build a drug empire. In Atlanta's nightlife scene, Mikey found new clients and even bigger opportunities. Working as a valet at upscale clubs, he rubbed shoulders with wealthy partygoers and hip-hop stars. Before long, the enterprising 19-year-old had tapped into a cartel-grade cocaine supply through an Atlanta contact. Mikey began transporting cocaine by the pound from Atlanta up I-95 to Charleston. His old friend Rob Liljeberg served as his distributor on campus, moving Mikey's coke to fraternity brothers and college buyers. In return, Rob had access to another lucrative product that was exploding in popularity among students: Xanax. Through a former fraternity brother named Zachary "Zach" Kligman, the Charleston crew was able to obtain huge quantities of Xanax.
And one of the things that's most interesting about this case is the fact that it includes such a large variety of drugs. Normally you're dealing with either cocaine, marijuana, or heroin. This particular case, you had all types of drugs, and it goes from the Xanax, which seems to be a drug of choice right now.
Kligman, a few years older, was a legendary supplier in his own right. Fellow dealers dubbed him the Charleston Kingpin for his ability to source virtually any drug. He had a secret storage locker off campus that held millions of Xanax pills, plus a cache of other narcotics and weapons, including 12-plus pounds of high-grade marijuana, MDMA, and LSD, and even an assault rifle fitted with a grenade launcher. With Mikey funneling cocaine in from Atlanta and Zach supplying Xanax and party drugs in Charleston, Rob became the middleman connecting the pipelines. He would buy bricks of Mikey's cocaine to chop up and sell locally, and also receive boxes of cut-rate Xanax from Kligman, which the group then sold at a hefty profit to students. The fraternity's social network turned into their customer base. As one observer noted, "It's hard to imagine a more convenient setup for large-scale dealing than a big southern frat." Mikey and Rob's crew took full advantage. They moved pills and powder at house parties, fraternity tailgates, downtown bars, and nightclubs, anywhere the college crowd gathered. Their Kappa Alpha brethren helped peddle drugs at multiple colleges too, leveraging inter-fraternity connections to push product at schools across the Southeast. On Charleston's infamous King Street Strip, a neon blur of clubs and pubs, the frat boys in polos and boat shoes worked the scene, quietly slinging pills amid the beer pong and live music. By early 2016, this loose fraternity syndicate had evolved into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Chief Mullen later estimated the operation moved millions of pills and millions of dollars, with the crew laundering cash through fraternity accounts by disguising drug money as alumni donations and social expenses. Shielded by fraternity loyalty and silence, the trafficking ring went unnoticed by campus authorities and police until Patrick Moffly's murder exposed everything. Patrick Moffly came from Charleston's elite circles and was no stranger to the drug scene, having grown up wealthy and developed a reputation as a heavy partier who quietly sold cocaine and pills to classmates. After a 2015 arrest for trying to sell cocaine at a USC tailgate, he bonded out with the help of his family's influence and spent months lying low while awaiting trial. By March 2016, restless and emboldened, Patrick reached out to old fraternity contacts, signaling that he was back in town and back in business. One of the people who got Patrick's message was Charles C.J. Mungan III, a 21-year-old small-time dealer from West Ashley. Mungan responded with a bold request. He wanted 10,000 Xanax pills. That enormous order shows just how commonplace bulk quantities had become in this network. Patrick agreed to supply Mungan, But he had a problem. His recent legal trouble had spooked his source, Zach Kligman, who refused to front him any more product. Desperate not to blow the sale, Patrick turned to a trusted housemate who still had access to Kligman's stash. Through that friend, Patrick managed to procure 10,000 Xanax bars at about 50 cents a pill, paying roughly $5,000, a price he marked up to $10,000 for Mungin, intending to double his money. By the afternoon of March 4th, 2016, the first Friday of College of Charleston's spring break, Patrick had the pills in hand and arranged for Mungin to come by his off-campus house at 97 Smith Street. Mungin arrived with accomplices, including John Glover, and what was supposed to be a quick deal purchase quickly spiraled into a robbery when a scuffle broke out around 4 p.m. Mungin shot Patrick in the chest, stole the bag of pills, and fled, leaving Patrick bleeding on the floor as loose Xanax scattered around him. Patrick was still alive when paramedics arrived, but just barely. He was rushed to MUSC Hospital, where doctors fought to save him. A chaplain called Patrick's mother with the news that her son had been shot. Elizabeth Moffly was determined it had to be a mistake. Patrick only had a broken arm, an injury he got while skateboarding days before. The chaplain gently replied, "The broken arm was last night. Tonight he's been shot." Patrick died soon after. It was immediately apparent to detectives that this was not a random burglary or a simple personal dispute. It was the fallout of a drug transaction. Now investigators had to figure out where such a huge amount of pills had come from, and who else was involved in flooding Charleston with Xanax. The investigation that followed Patrick Moffly's murder was intense and fast-moving. Charleston police, working with the DEA and FBI, quickly traced the Xanax supply chain back to campus and identified suspects in Patrick's circle of friends. Once one link in the chain broke, the whole structure collapsed. In the weeks after the shooting, loyalty among the frat dealers gave way to panic, and unsurprisingly, they started flipping on one another. Former friends secretly began wearing wires, setting up buys and betraying confidences to save themselves. The first major break came when police zeroed in on Zach Kligman, the so-called Xanax kingpin. A search of a treehouse on his parents' property ended up being the jackpot. Nearly 1 million Xanax pills plus 20-plus pounds of cannabis and multiple firearms were eventually linked to Kligman's operation. Facing overwhelming evidence, Kligman agreed to cooperate with authorities. He pointed fingers at his College of Charleston accomplices and helped set up an undercover sting. According to reports, Kligman arranged a cocaine deal with Rob Liljeberg while secretly recording it on a hidden camera. Rob was arrested soon after, caught on tape selling drugs. Facing decades in prison, Rob Liljeberg chose to cooperate with investigators and turned on his closest friend, revealing the full scope of the fraternity's drug ring and Mikey Schmidt's role in running the pipeline from Atlanta. Wearing a wire, Rob lured Mikey back to Charleston under the guise of celebration and recorded him incriminating himself during a rooftop meetup in late May 2016. Days later, on June 7, 2016, authorities arrested Mikey as he entered his BMW, bringing the fraternity's drug kingpin to an abrupt end. Over the next 48 hours, police rounded up the rest of the ring's key members. Months of investigation, including surveillance, 12-plus search warrants, and controlled buys, culminated in a final sweep. In total, 9 individuals were arrested in connection with the fraternity drug network. On June 8, 2016, Chief Greg Mullen held a landmark press conference alongside Mayor John Tecklenburg and federal agents to reveal the results of the 6-month operation.
Police Chief Greg Mullen says it's one of the biggest drug busts in the city in quite some time, and he says it highlights that guns, drugs, and violence go hand in hand. This afternoon, police put on display the drugs that were seized. They included cocaine, marijuana, Xanax pills, powdered ecstasy, and LSD. Some of the drugs were hidden in a bag of popcorn. Also seized more than $200,000 in cash, 7 guns, including some powerful semi-automatic rifles, and 4 vehicles. Mullen says there was a connection between the bust and the murder of Patrick Moffly.
The lucrative narcotics business is alive and well, and we certainly want to continue all of our efforts to make sure that we take as much of this off the street as possible, because we know it's destroying many people's lives.
Police displayed 7 handguns and rifles, plus a tactical grenade launcher that one suspect had somehow acquired. And alongside the drugs and weapons sat stacks of cash totaling over $200,000. Many of those arrested came from affluent suburbs or well-known families, granting them a presumption of innocence, one that law enforcement, administrators, and the public rarely questioned. That privilege worked like a force field. On a campus defined by manicured lawns and preppy tradition, these young men faded into the background, protected by expectations of who criminals are supposed to be. In the aftermath, the case drew national attention, leading many to question if these fraternity drug dealers would face serious consequences. The answer, as it turned out, was complicated. Mikey Schmidt, identified by prosecutors as the lead mastermind, did end up taking the hardest fall. To avoid a trial, Mikey accepted a plea deal on multiple trafficking and distribution charges. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison, with no possibility of parole. As of 2025, the one-time KA hotshot remains behind bars, serving out that decade-long term in a South Carolina correctional facility. But Schmidt was virtually alone in enduring long-term punishment. As of now, Mikey is the only person from the story who's in prison. In fact, most of the other frat perpetrators walked free or received only light penalties. Rob Liljeberg, despite his central role, managed to parlay his cooperation into a much-reduced sentence. He spent roughly 2 years in jail, a far cry from the decades he initially faced. Zach Kligman, the so-called kingpin who stockpiled the millions of pills, somehow escaped any prison time at all. He got off with probation after assisting investigators. Several others, Naus, Reams, Sliker, Poshek, received suspended sentences, probation, or time served. A few peripheral players weren't charged at all. In the end, except for Mikey, nearly every one of the young men involved either got a very short jail time or no incarceration whatsoever. It was a remarkably lenient outcome, especially when compared to the typical fates of lower-level drug offenders with far fewer resources. Even the institutions involved emerged with only superficial damage. The Kappa Alpha Order fraternity at College of Charleston, which had effectively incubated the ring, was suspended from campus for a mere 4 years. After laying low, Kappa Alpha was quietly reinstated. Before long, the chapter was back to throwing parties as if nothing had happened, its members once again posting beer-soaked revelry on public Instagram accounts. The frat boys crashed headfirst into the law, and most of them walked away with barely a scratch. One by one, they slipped out of the wreckage, some leveraging plea deals, others cushioned by family influence or sympathetic courts. Within a couple of years, many of the key players were back in society, degree or not, free to start careers in finance or real estate, their mugshots fading into Google's back pages.